Well, with us tonight to discuss Turkey's Twitter ban is the author Elif Shafak, who has 1.5 million followers on the microblogging site. And from the University of North Carolina, the social media professor Zeynep Tufekci. Firstly to you, Zeynep, why did the Turkish government even try to do this? They've been completely outplayed.
Well, my sense is they would like Twitter to open offices in Turkey and start responding to court orders and other government requests. Facebook and YouTube both have offices in Turkey. In fact, the YouTube ban finally ended when Google agreed to open offices in Turkey. So I see this as a salvo to try to tame Twitter, which until now has been an untamed platform as far as the government's concerned.
So a direct threat to the company then, sort of be subject to our rules or get out.
That's exactly right. Because of YouTube ban, Turkish users are very practiced at circumvention. In fact, during the ban, the Prime Minister himself had said, "What's the big deal? I get around it." And as we saw, there are now more tweets coming from Turkey. The difference between the YouTube ban era and now is then there was no big social media fueled political threat to the government from YouTube. Now there is from Twitter, from Facebook, from YouTube, from all the social media platforms.
But Elif, aren't you worried, though, that Turkey is trying to use the kind of tools that you might expect from a really authoritarian government, like China, for example?
Yeah, I find it very worrying, quite alarming indeed. We weren't expecting this ban, and I find it unacceptable. I think it's violating our universal fundamental right of freedom of speech.
So starting down a road of censorship, is this what happens now in a very powerful country where dramatic things are happening? Social media is part of the battleground.
Yes, the social media has become quite politicized in Turkey and even polarized, I might say. We must remember that Turkey has a very large population of young people. You know, that number is huge. But also, I think, particularly in the last years, in the most recent years, as the media diversity visibly shrunk in Turkey, more and more people started to go on the social media to find alternative sources of information, sometimes misinformation as well. So the social media has become increasingly politicized in Turkey over the last years.
But Zeynep, in America, isn't there always a danger that social media is overhyped? We've seen other events, particularly in the Arab countries, where it was a big part of protests, but then didn't change much.
Well, you have to look at what social media is good at and what social media may not be so good at. It is spectacular for busting open censorship. It's spectacular for creating a challenge in the public sphere. So what Elif just said about social media as this politicized space where censorship is broken, where people can find each other. I did interviews during the Gezi Park protests where women, elderly women told me they were begging their children to teach them how to use Twitter so they could finally connect and learn and get together. But as you point out, what we've also seen is that it doesn't necessarily help create the kind of structures that allow the opposition to strategize, to engage with politics and electoral politics in particular. This is partly because this is how people are using it at the moment. So it creates these grounds in which there's a strong challenge and the governments can't rule as they did before, but it also doesn't seem to create the grounds, or people can't use it to create the grounds with which they can carry forward the impact. So we have a situation that's really volatile. Governments can't rule the way they did before. The old methods of control don't work. But the new ways of challenging haven't completely matured either. So there is this dangerous middle ground where we see around the world government after government shaking and then resorting to massive repression, as we've seen in the case of Egypt. And of course, that always works, unfortunately.
Thank you, Zeynep. In an element, in a way, a hashtag doesn't create a lasting revolution, exactly as Zeynep was saying.
Yes, as Zeynep was saying, there are two sides, right? I mean, on the one hand, these bans, clearly they don't work. Since the ban went into effect last night, there has been an increase, 138% increase in Turkish tweets posted. Normally on an average day we have 1.8 million tweets. Now it's over 2 million tweets. There are more than 12 million Twitter users in Turkey based. So it's really big in Turkey. On the other hand, clearly, even though people express their rage, resentment, anger, there isn't a structure, so we don't know which way it could go. And there's also, let us not forget, there's a lot of misinformation and slander as well.
Elif and Zeynep in North Carolina, thank you very much indeed for joining us here tonight.